Oh, okay. AV, thanks, man. AV gentlemen, we ready to go? All right. Thank you very much for attending, everyone. I greatly appreciate it. And if I seem cagey and uncomfortable, please understand it's because I'm used to moving around and I have to stay right here, or I guess a void will open and I'll get sucked into it, and that won't be very cool. So the name of this presentation is Hacking Back Active Defense and Internet Tough Guys. And one of the things I want to say is a lot of the people that help contribute to this project, to this idea, are here in this room. So it's really cool. Kind of get everybody together for a little bit. Now, what is this presentation about? A lot of the presentations that you will see at this convention and a lot of the other cons that you attend are all about breaking stuff, right? And breaking stuff is awesome. We've seen presentations on breaking AV. We've seen presentations on doing shims in Microsoft Windows with Microsoft Windows tools for the purpose of creating rootkits. We've seen how many presentations on AV bypass? 3, 4? Quite a few. And what I'm going to try to implore for you all to do is get involved on the other side of the fence. Get involved on the other side of the fence, and that means blue team. Because all of you guys know this. As much as we like to pretend that being a hacker, being a pen tester is uber elite, and it makes us very, I don't know, kind of godlike in the community, a lot of you guys that do pen testing, you guys know it's not all that hard. Realistically, if we want to actually start making a difference, it's not about breaking things, and there is value in breaking things, but it's about coming up with creative solutions far beyond breaking into things, far beyond getting to the point where you do a pen test report and you say, hey, have you thought about patching 08067 Net API? Because you should probably do that. And almost any of your customers should know that. And it's about moving beyond a lot of the traditional security technologies that we have because they are failing, because they're flawed technologies, because they're flawed ideas. So let's get started. First and foremost, I want to start out with a quote. A lot of people that are in this presentation want some type of indication, want some type of thread of hope that says that you can do active defense, that you can actually take the war back to the bad guys. And I give you this quote. The quote is, it's one thing to cause a stolen computer to report its IP address and its geographical location in an effort to track it down. It is something else entirely different to violate federal wiretapping laws by intercepting the electronic communications of the person using the stolen laptop. So, I'm going to draw a line in the sand, and the line is this. If you're going to get into active defense, if you're going to get into hacking back, it is okay to get locational information. Is it okay to get IP address information? But once you start perusing the files of the bad guy, once you start trying to embarrass that individual, once you start taking pictures of that individual, you're very likely crossing legal lines. And I would also say moral lines. How many of you guys are friends of the EFF in here and donate? One of the things about the EFF is they believe that everybody has rights. Even if you do something wrong, everybody has rights. Even the bad guys, even the people that break into your computer systems. So let's get what we need to make sure that we can proceed with justice. Let's not go any further because that's not cool. And it's also very likely illegal. This particular case was for Susan Clements Jeffrey versus Absolute Software. Absolute Software installed LoJack-like software on computer systems, and she purchased a stolen computer. The school district that owned the computer and owned the rights to LoJack software immediately started taking pictures of Miss Jeffries in various states of undress and sexual activity while she was sexting her boyfriend. That was not her computer. She had no right to that computer system. It was a school's computer, and the judge ruled that even though she was wrong, she still had a right to privacy. So that's what we have to keep in mind. We're not selling the concept of vengeance today. We're not selling the concept of venom. We're not selling the idea of taking out IP addresses and hacking nodes that the bad guys control, because that's dumb, it's ineffective, and it won't work. What we are selling is the idea of being able to identify where the bad guys are, to kind of unmask where they are. And more importantly, I want to show you that this is actually being done today, because that's the biggest thing that we all need to see. Whenever you guys go back to work and you talk to your executives, you talk to your management, they want to know, are we the first ones to jump off the cliff? And I'm here to tell you, you're not. So, who do we trust in this industry? I have a real problem with the state of security, and Paul Azadorian covered this very, very, very cleanly in his Security Sucks and You're Wearing a Nursing Bra presentation. And something that we've been talking about, and Paul talked about it a lot in his talk, is I want you guys to think about all the technologies that you implemented 8 years ago. What did you implement? Go ahead and shout it out. We can make this interactive. Antivirus, firewalls, what else? IDS, IPS. What's that? It sounded like soup vac to me. Yeah, two-factor authentication, awesome. And what are we still selling today? Antivirus, firewall, IDS, IPS. Somebody said whitelisting over here. Who said that? We're just now starting to get to the point where we're starting to think about whitelisting, and that's actually a good approach. It's a great approach. But the thing is, whenever we start talking about whitelisting, it's not a very commercially viable product in a lot of ways. Now, I know there's some products out there that are trying to make a go of it, but who here has ever implemented things like Bit9 and CoreTrace and application whitelisting? Was that a pleasant experience in your organization? It's the worst thing ever. Worse than being raped by clowns? I think not, sir. I think not. It's horrible. And what sucks is in this industry we have two choices. The choices are either A, things that don't work that are easy. Dude, we can implement blacklist, roll it across our entire environment, and we can check that checkbox. That's awesome. Or we can choose things that are hard and have a chance of working, like whitelisting. It has a chance of working. Internet whitelisting, restricting what sites your users go to. How many people have tried internet whitelisting? How many would say that that man is wrong? Restricting users' access to the internet is the worst thing in the world. And here's a thought exercise, completely unrelated to active defense. I want you guys to think about it like this. Let's say that tomorrow you guys go to work, on Monday you go to work, and you whitelist every site that your users want to go to, short of like gambling and porn and malware sites. If they want to go to yahoo.com, you let them go to yahoo.com. If they want to go to CNN, sure, you bet. Facebook.com, absolutely. Any advertising sites, well, those wouldn't be on the whitelist, would they? Because their domains wouldn't be there. What percentage of the internet would you allow your users to go to versus your blacklist approach today? 1%. Less than 1%. What percent of the internet do you let your users go to with blacklisting today? Let's not talk about that. That's too depressing. So we've got to change what we're thinking. We've got to change what we're thinking because we're being sold the exact same crap products. We're being sold the exact same antivirus products. We're being sold the exact same types of firewall technologies. But every generation comes out, they say, this time, honest, it's going to work. It's next generation. And we'll finally get it to work. It won't work. So what do we have here? Well, what we've done is we've released a distribution called the Active Defense Harbinger Distribution. And we have a number of people here that have been involved in that. We have the people from Secure Ideas. Do we have Kevin Johnson and James? Or did they ditch me completely before this presentation? They said there's beer that needs to be drunk. Thank you. There he is. Secure Ideas, please stand up. Or not. If you can't stand up, that's okay. But we also have Benjamin Donnelly. Tim Tomes is, he says he's watching football today, but I think he's hungover. We have Mick Douglas here. Woo! And Mark Baggett is here as well. A lot of people that have contributed to this product and to these ideas is present today. And the whole idea of creating the Active Defense Harbinger distribution is to make something that you guys can immediately download and you guys can have a full active defense environment up and running in your environment. I want to show you what it looks like. So this is ADHD. Notice the swanky logos. Very nice. Also, whenever you first get logged into it, one of the things that a lot of people ask is, where's the usage documentation? And the usage documentation is right on the desktop. And every single one of the tools, we're not even going to talk about all these tools because we talked about these in other conferences. We have artillery. You guys know Dave Kennedy's artillery, right? Another excellent penetration tester who's also giving back to defense. That's awesome. Bear Trap for honeyports, Decloak for deobfuscating the IP addresses, originally created by H.D. Moore and the folks at the Metasploit project. We've taken it and we've updated it. Ethan did most of the work, well, almost all the work on doing that. So we've got that for decloaking IP addresses. Honey Badger, we're going to talk about. Nova, creating honeyports very quickly and easily. Pushpin, finding geolocation on bad guys and then find their social network usage. Spider Trap, infinitely recursive web directories, web bug servers, and every single one of these, if you click on it, we have basic usage, step-by-step instructions on how to use it. So like I said, you guys can get this distribution. You can have it up and running in your environment. And you guys can use it. We built it off the idea of Doug Burks and the Security Onion. If you guys have used that, you know he's taken things that are hard and he's making them easy. That's what we set out to do with this distribution. So give me a second here. So that's the Active Defense Harbinger distribution. We'll probably come back to it here a little bit later. All right? Next up. So I want to introduce you in this particular presentation some people that are implementing active defense and using it. The reason why is so whenever you talk to management and you talk to your lawyers and they say, well, is anybody doing this? We don't want to be the first. You can say, no, here are some examples. Unfortunately, some of the examples associated with DOD, IC, and law enforcement, they did not want me to share those with you, but I fully expect that you guys would have expected that. So I'm going to share with you guys some open source groups and some different groups that have kind of obfuscated who they are and who they work with. And I want to introduce you first to Terry Cutler, which Digital Locksmiths. Now, Terry Cutler called me up and he said, man, we've been using the Active Defense Harbinger distribution, and do you know who One Direction is? Talk about two completely different topics and tangents, right? It's like, I really like pie. Moose, what? So Terry had been approached by a couple of people in Montreal, and what had happened is One Direction was coming to town, and for those of you that are horribly confused, think NSYNC, Backstreet Boys, or New Kids on the Block, but I don't know, a newer generation of them, right? And tickets were selling very, very quickly. And they have the equivalent of Craigslist up there. It's not called Craigslist, it's called something else. And people were posting and saying, I desperately need tickets for One Direction. My daughter and all of her friends want to go. And scammers were basically showing up and saying, we'll get you tickets so your kid can see One Direction. And of course, you know how it ends. The people transferred money, no tickets showed up. So Terry started working with these, and there was one mother in particular that he was working with. One mother in particular said, do you still have the email address of the person that is scamming? He goes, yes, absolutely I do. So Terry worked with us and we created a Word web bug doc. It's not the one that just does simple callbacks. We'll talk about honeydocs and Marcus Carey a little bit later, but this one actually does full geolocation where you're at through VB script. And he actually put that into a document and then sent it from the lady's email and said, oh, these are my baby girls. These are the people that want to see One Direction. They're such good kids. Please give us the tickets. The bad guy opened it and it dropped a pin on exactly where the bad guy was in Montreal. That's awesome. We ran into a problem. A consistent problem anytime we're working with active defense implementation. What happens when you go to law enforcement and say, the bad guy's at this address? Right there. Cops are like, right there? Yep, right there on that pin in the center of the map. You just go there or get a warrant. Go there. I don't know. That doesn't make any sense to me. To date, still working with law enforcement, they have no idea how to approach this. And he actually worked with a number of victims after he aired this news story on local TV and actually geolocated, I think, 4 of the different scammers. And he has the addresses, he knows exactly where they're at, and law enforcement doesn't want to do much with it because they don't understand this technology. So I warn you, there's a lot of times whenever you get to the edge, you get to the precipice, you know exactly where the bad guys are, you got latitude and longitude. Many times law enforcement will be like, they're in Shanghai, I'm sorry, I can't help you. But there is some kind of catharsis, I suppose, in actually knowing who is attacking you and where they're attacking you from. And yes, this is actually part of the Active Defense Harbinger distribution. If we look at the Active Defense Harbinger distribution, and we just surf to itself, you have a number of web-based tools that are easily accessible. So you can start up Honey Badger, you can do geolocation reporting, WebBug Server will come back to that. You can just click on these, jump in if you need information on how to use them. We have the full document available to you. So. All right, Tim Tomes. Anybody go to his Recon NG talk? Good talk. A lot of you guys don't know this, but that's not Tim's favorite tool. Recon NG is not Tim's favorite tool. Tim's favorite tool that he's written is Honey Badger. And Tim has been running Honey Badger for quite some time on his web servers, and he's gotten some interesting locational information from attackers. We're going to talk about, from a psychological perspective, how you can get attackers to actually run things like Java applets, which actually is far easier than you think it would be. For example, how many of you guys are pen testers and you use signed Java applet attacks in SET? What percentage of the population clicks on whatever pops up on their computer screen? Pretty high. And with attackers, it's actually higher than that if you use the right pretext and kind of the social kind of enticement to get them to click the links and run the applets. So like I said, he's got some very, very interesting hits. Like this is actually technically in China, but the name of the city is actually very Russian. It's kind of northwestern China. But he had a number of attacks from this particular latitude and longitude. I've actually zoomed out of a lot of these, not all of them, but I've zoomed out a lot of these. But on Google Maps, you can zoom right in on top of the apartment complex. We even had one situation where a university student was attacking one of our web servers and was attacking it again and again and again and again and running pretty much any applet we gave him. And it put a pin right on top of his university, on top of the dorm, and pretty much on the side of the dorm that he was at. And we were able to coordinate with the university, and the university said, yes, that student's right here, here's the student's email address, and we were able to get full contact information with the university student. There's nothing like sending an email to an attacker and saying, would you please stop trying to hack my website? This one reacted and he said, are you guys taking internships? I said, no. That position is filled. So good job, Benjamin. You filled that up. Here's another one that's right smack dab in the middle of Moscow, which was kind of fun. I actually know where this city is. Some of the other ones are a little bit hazy. And then he also got one demo page. We got 20, and by the way, he calls it demo page. You can actually install Honeybadger in your environment on multiple different web servers. Now, the way you would actually implement Honeybadger in your environment is you would insert like an iframe, or you would insert like a script source on a section of your web page where users don't go. Like, you don't want to put this on your home page because that would be bad. Instead, you want to create like a robots.txt entry, and you want to say disallow, no index, no follow, the admin directory, or the scripts directory, something that would be enticing to a bad guy, but a normal user would never go there. So the bad guy shows up, runs it, and runs whatever applet's there. And we'll talk about how we can set that up a little bit later, but you can install it on multiple different websites, and you can track the location of any of the attackers that are going to those websites and running those applets in the process. So. And here's one of Tim's old house. I thought this would be okay. This one's actually in the form of a document. Remember, I was talking about Terry and how Terry was using documents to track bad guys. And has anybody ever tried to do geolocation based on IP address? It's not really hyper accurate at all. It isn't. So what this tool does, and it works with documents, it works in web technologies, you can embed it inside of Excel spreadsheets. What you do is you create a macro. Now, we all know that macros are evil, right? Like, if you saw a macro as in a document coming into your environment, you probably wouldn't run it. But in what type of situation do you think a bad guy would be excited about running a macro? Not necessarily in a Word document. Spreadsheets. Why would a bad guy be up for running a macro in a spreadsheet? Formulas, which have data. And data is very, very important for the attacker. So you can actually embed this macro inside of a Word document, Excel spreadsheet, it's your choice. And what happens whenever you open it, it drops down to the command line. It gets a location of all of the wireless access points nearby you. It uploads that information to Google. Google kicks out latitude, longitude, and accuracy in meters. So let's think about the implications of this in incident response and forensics. The reason why this is so cool is if you have a system that you know to be compromised, what you can do is you can take an Excel spreadsheet or a Word document, put it on the desktop, make it look enticing. This is bait, like, financial plans for 2014, scientific formulas, accounting, whatever it is you think a bad guy would be interested in. And you put that on the infected machine. The bad guy pulls that document back, loads it up on their computer system, bang, you now got their location. But it has to be something the bad guy would want to run. It has to be something the bad guy would want to run. 90% of this game is psychology. It's not just about cool technologies. So this is actually a demo of Tim running it at his old house in Ohio, and it actually put a pin right on top of his house where his office was. So this works out very, very, very well for detecting exactly where bad guys are coming from. Now, a quick note, because I know that there's some people thinking this through. They're like, wait a minute, if the bad guy's attacking me through Tor, this isn't going to work. No, it's going to work. The reason why is because all the code executes locally on the bad guy's computer system, and then it sends you the data. So that's the most important thing. It runs locally, grabs the access points, and sends you the data. And if they're coming through Tor, it doesn't matter. As long as you can get that data back, you've got them. All right? The other thing that I hear from people is, well, a bad guy, if they're really, really careful, a bad guy will be able to open those documents on a machine that's offline with no internet connectivity. I will totally take that trade. If you look at the way it is right now, whenever you're working with decloak or obfuscating IP addresses for decloak type technologies, or running things like Honeybadger or IP addresses in Word documents, a bad guy has two choices. One choice is actually being completely anonymous and running everything through Tor and completely locking off their computer system and opening every single Word document on an isolated VM so it doesn't do any callbacks. What do you think happens to the overall capability for the attacker to be effective in his or her job in breaking into your systems? What happens to the amount of time that they have to expend to try to successfully break into your systems and get your data? It goes up exponentially, right? And if we look at a formula, detection time plus reaction time must be less than the amount of time it takes to detect an attacker. Well, if we can greatly increase the amount of time it takes for a bad guy to start siphoning through every single document, that is a trade we want to take. And if they want to be that elite, if they want to do everything in that level of paranoia, that's awesome. I'll take that. It's going to take them a lot more time. But as soon as they step off that wall and they start going to speed and ease of use just a little bit, that's all we need to be able to start detecting them. And that's what we're talking about here. If they're not using wireless, we can still run things from the command line. That's an excellent question. You could even trace route from their computer system. And the other thing that's beautiful is in many situations where people use Tor, you can use Tor correctly, run all of your applications through Tor. We have found the vast majority of attackers do not. They'll use Tor proxy for their browser session, but if another application opens up outside of Tor, it doesn't go through Tor. If they don't have wireless, then we can do trace route back from their systems. It's much better than geolocation based on IP addresses. Endpoint IP addresses, not so hot. But if you can actually find the routing hops in between, those locations are far more accurate. So another hand, come up, sir. VPN, if they're actually connecting to a system that they've compromised and they're going through that VPN, is that what you mean? A private VPN, absolutely. Once again, if you're looking at something like Honey Badger, that code executes locally. And then you'll get the data back. So good question. But like I said, almost all these situations, there are ways where bad guys can completely and utterly obfuscate everything about themselves, but that's going to greatly slow down their progress in attacking your systems, and that's important. All right, so the next person, I can't give you his name. I asked what his NIM was, and he said, call me Wookie Boy. And he said, please find a picture that makes me look cool. And I was thinking it's Chewbacca. I mean, seriously? How much cooler can I make it? And then I saw this. It was like, oh yeah. Does anybody know where this comes from? Miami Vice. So this would be Tubbs style. So Crockett would be Han Solo on the side. So Wookie Boy works for a very large organization that is extremely well known, and unfortunately the organization was like, nope, you can't release anything associated with our organization or the specific name, so Wookie Boy sent me some logs. The first thing is he really likes artillery. If you guys have not played with artillery, you need to. A lot of people look at Social Engineering Toolkit that Dave Kennedy and crew has created, which is an awesome tool, but they've also created probably one of the best quick-fire defensive tools that you guys can put in your environment. It gives you the ability of creating automated blacklists, and I'll talk about that here in a second. And it also has file integrity checking as well. So let's talk about the automated blacklist. So what happens is with artillery, you can set up a number of ports, like telnet ports, FTP ports, that if the bad guy makes a full established connection to that port, it will blacklist them. At which point there's people in the audience, I'm sure, that are saying, wait a minute, couldn't a bad guy use this to DOS your own systems? Not very likely, and here's why. If I'm making a full established connection with your system, I send you a SYN, right? If the port is open, how do you respond? SYN-ACK, absolutely, very good, and then we have an ACK and it goes back and forth. To spoof a full established connection, the bad guy needs to know what that ACK response is. And everybody knows initial sequence numbers. How many bits are there in that header field? 32 bits. How many possible values are there? A lot. Now, it means it's not impossible. It's possible, of course, but there's a lot of numbers. And also, if the system you're trying to spoof is updates.microsoft.com, or your router, all the while you're spoofing, it's sending resets and killing that race condition every single time very, very quickly. So that's why tools like this work and honeyports work. Paul went through and reworked all of the honeyports into one simple script that's on Python now, that you can run on Mac, on Windows, and on Linux, and it works great, but it only triggers with full established connections. So when a bad guy tries to hit your network and tries to port scan you, it ends up blacklisting them, only if it's a full established connection. Now this is really useful on the outside of the environment. It's even more wicked effective on the inside of an environment. So when somebody's doing an internal pen test, do me a favor, fire this up. Anybody, we've got pen testers in here, right? So when you're pen testing and the entire network goes dark, what do you think just happened? You knocked it over, right? Now there's some people who are like, oh, they're blacklisting me. No, that's not the first thing that goes through your head. That's not the little worm of fear that's going through your head. It's, oh shit, I broke it. And then you call your boss, or my people call me and they're like, John, yeah? What's our errors and emissions insurance? Is that up to date? So yeah, that's what we want people to do. We want them to panic. We want them to panic. All right, next one that he had that I thought was pretty cool. This is an example of a bad guy who's using a Mac. You can see it has his username from his computer system and his host name, latitude and longitude, and within 106 meters. Once again, the hard thing is, many times when you go to some people in law enforcement, you're like, "Dear FBI agent, the attacker's at this address at Pepperdine University. Please go arrest him." And they're like, "Well, this is too easy." Could you do something like try to make it harder? And a lot of times it's like the dog that caught the wheel, and he doesn't know what to do with it at that point. So it's pretty cool. So that's WookieBoy. Now, how did WookieBoy get the bad guys to actually run these scripts? Now, this is a signed Java applet. If you want to get really, really fancy, get a digital code signing certificate. I can't remember what Dave's company is, but I think that at Black Hills Information Security, the name of our code signing certificate company out of Idaho is Secure Code Signing Certificates, LLC, which is awesome. But you want to convince the bad guy to run it, and they're not going to run it if you go to a website and it says, "This page is totally not tracking you." We want it to make it look like something that A, should have Java, and B, would give them access. So here you can see that we can mimic a VNC viewer. I'm sure that you guys have seen this a lot of your penetration tests. If you see this on a pen test, what do you tend to do? Happy dance, right? Now, another question for a lot of pen testers. Many of you, when you do a pen test and you see this, you're going to use your own version of VNC viewer or your own version of VNC client. Now, this is important. Does it always work? Are all versions of VNC client and VNC viewer, VNC server compatible with each other? No. And after it's failed 3 or 4 times, what do? You go back to the website and you run the Java applet that comes with a version of VNC that you're attacking. And the thing that sucks is I know that there's a lot of pen testers in here. They're like, "Dude, I did that last week. They could have got me. They could have got me." So that's one example. Here's another example. We got the standard black box Internet Network Services VNC viewer, which you can clone. And then, of course, I just went and did a screenshot of the standard real VNC. And as you can see, we have the wonderful little cup of coffee. So I ran this on a local system. So we got a little cup of coffee. And the bad guy, as soon as it pops up and it says, "Do you want to run the application called VNC Viewer from Secure Code Signing Certificates, LLC?" Bad guy's going to be like, "Oh, hell yeah. I want to get access to that as quickly as possible." Here's some other ones. Bad guys would never run this. Network user authentication. Anyone know what this is from? Yep, absolutely. Authentication proxies. Very good. Here's another one. SoftLayer, IBM. This is actually a Java-based VPN product. And if you use tools like, with SET, you can clone a website. We're doing the exact same thing. You clone a target website and you insert, instead of SET as an evil Java applet, you insert your Honey Badger Java applet. And when the bad guy comes to the site, the little Java applet pops up, they click run, you now have their latitude and longitude. So very, very cool. All of it is in, yes sir, all of it is in ADHD. You can literally go and you can saturate the rest of the bandwidth from the hotel downloading it. And you can download ADHD. Here's another one, just kind of drive home how effective this can be, because I know there's people that are still skeptical and they say things like, "There's no way a good attacker would ever run that." Now, I am sure that a really good attacker would fall into that pit, realize what happened, get out, dust themselves off, and keep going. But the trick is they fell into the pit. And that's what we're looking for. So this is a bank that did not want to be mentioned by name, unfortunately. So what they wanted to do is they wanted to test the idea of active defense. They wanted to test the idea of Honey Badger as part of active defense. And they wanted to see exactly how many bad guys would fall into this pit. How many bad guys could we catch utilizing something like Honey Badger? And they let it run for 1 week, and what they got on a page that nobody should gain access to is they got access to geolocation for 2,044 different attackers. 2,044. Do you know what their CSO did when he saw this? He looks at me and he goes, "Does everybody hate us?" And if you knew the name of the bank, your answer would be, yes. So what I think is really cute is if you go through the data and you start sifting through it, you'll start seeing attackers that come in, they fall into the pit, and then they realize what just happened, and then they redo their pin in like the middle of in the middle of the desert, the middle of the Sahara, or here in the middle of Siberia. So they'll basically run it multiple times like, ha ha, ha, yeah, you got me, ha, ha, see, I'm in Siberia now, ha, now you don't know where I am. But no, it's unbelievably accurate, it works extremely well. And like I said, the bad guys, they fall into these pits, and a lot of the good ones pick themselves up, dust themselves off, and keep going. But it's absolutely frightening to see how many bad guys, as soon as they think they have that access point, the way into that environment, will not let go. Will not let go. And a lot of you guys as pen testers, we're built the same way, right guys? I mean, every time you go into a pen test, you're always looking for that kill, right? Once you get past that first kill, you relax. Like, we got access to the environment. We're cool. You don't have to worry about the customer saying things like, you guys are incompetent. You didn't even break into my environment. If we hired real hackers, they would get in. After you get past that first hurdle, you breathe, you step back, and then you continue your test because you're not done with just one shell. But there's that little tinge, right, of excitement right before you get access to the first system. That's what we're taking it on, because it's like a drug. Any of you guys that do pen testing, you know it's like a drug. People pay us money to do things that bad guys do, and we break into systems and we get access to things, and we have power that normal people do not have. It's like a drug, and if you can get somebody just a little bit closer to their drug fix, they're going to run it, and that's what we're taking advantage of, and that's about psychology. I want to share some research by Kyle Wilhoit. This is great. He didn't use the active defense harbinger distribution, and Kyle, if you're here or listening, check it out. It's really, really cool. Instead, he used something called the browser exploitation framework, which you guys know, of course, from Wade Alcorn. I talk about this extensively in a number of classes that we teach. But it also has a Java applet that we think is not as functional as the one in Honey Badger, but it does the same types of things. It'll geolocate bad guys. And he wanted to do a test and see exactly how many bad guys would go after SCADA systems. Once again, this is a published article. This is something that has happened. And it says a third of attacks against industrial control systems honeypots, 35%, originated in China. But 1 in 5, 19% originated in the US, and security researchers also found that a surprisingly high percentage, 12% of attacks against the honeypot control system had established came from Southeast Asian nations of Laos. So that's some interesting intel, right? I mean, that's some interesting intel, it's some interesting insight. The other thing that I didn't get from Wikiboy, but he said that somewhere in the vicinity of 85% of the attacks and the IP addresses that he shuns are directly from China. Now, I have a theory about this. A lot of people talk about the advanced persistent threat or the not so advanced persistent threat, whatever they want to call it, and they say, well, Chinese are hacking us. I have a theory that China's not hacking anybody. I have a theory that China's just setting up great big proxies, and the US and every major country are hacking each other through China, and China's just sniffing it. But that's my little pipe dream. It's my little pipe dream, all right? So I think that is extremely, extremely helpful if we can kind of establish, would bad guys actually attack SCADA systems? Yes. Would bad guys fall into these pits? Yes. So we even had one customer that was an extortion case that we were working with. Once again, a customer that didn't want me to share any slides, but it was an extortion case where a bad guy was sending in emails saying that they were going to poison their customers and bad things would happen to them. Now, the customer did something that we didn't agree with. They said, hey, what we're going to do is we want to send the bad guy a non-disclosure agreement. And Paul and I were like, that's the dumbest thing we've ever heard. I mean, if somebody's trying to, blackmail your organization, right, and you send them a non-disclosure agreement, it's not like they would open it. But they totally did. It was really, really cool. The best part was they called us and they said, we got the bad guy through traditional means. They set up a drop point and they arrested the individual, old school Hollywood style. And we actually went back and rechecked our logs, and sure enough, we got the location of the bad guy, which is cool. We even got him while he was driving through Italy, and while he was opening up the document again and again and again in his car, which I thought was a lot of fun. Just a lot of fun. I also want to call out some people that are very cool. Anybody here know Marcus? Round of applause for Marcus. So Marcus Carey came out with HoneyDocs, and I want to clear this up very, very, very quickly. Marcus came out with HoneyDocs, which is a great website. If you guys just Google it, it's honeydocs.com. And I had a number of people shoot me emails saying, dude, Marcus Carey is ripping off the Active Defense Harbinger distribution. No, that stops now. Everything we do in ADHD is open source. If somebody wants to take it and make it a product, do it. If somebody wants to take it and they want to implement something and they want to do it better, do it. I have nothing but respect for companies like Mykonos and CrowdStrike and a number of companies that are taking these ideas and doing this. I don't care. The only thing that we set out to do years ago when Paul and I set out to do this is we wanted to start making an impact in the security community. And as Paul regularly points out to me, and I tell this again and again and again, I suck at capitalism. So every time I see people that come up with a cool product, extending the ideas and making those ideas sharper and more accessible, we got to applaud them. We've got to applaud them. And Marcus Carey, without question, in HoneyDocs, has the single best glow light stick available. All right, so my stuff works. I'm going to continue. All right. So Marcus, okay, that's a bit much, guys. I liked it better the other way. All right, mood. That's perfect. Just leave it like that. That's fine. So I cannot give Marcus enough credit because this website is slick. This website is accessible. I think that executives, if you want to demonstrate capability, this is the website you take them to. This is what you show them. He has a website where you can automatically create the documents. You can send the documents. You can put the document. That really isn't helping. We're tech geeks. Like the light hurts us, literally. But it's great. Please, please, please check out Marcus's website, support it, sign up for it, absolutely. However, if you want to try it at home and you feel a little uncomfortable having the callback go through a third party, you could also use ADHD, the Active Defense Harbinger distribution. Now, Marcus talks about this on his website as well. If you notice, we have two separate different types of calls within a Word document. Oh, by the way, a lot of people don't know this, but Microsoft Word is a browser. Close your eyes, click your heels together 3 times, and tell yourself, Word is a browser. Word is a browser. Now, with Word being a browser, you can actually insert HTML inside of the document, and when the document opens, it'll look like a standard Word document. You can edit it like a standard Word document. You just take the HTML and rename it to a .doc file, and then you can edit it to your heart's content. And then when the bad guy opens it, it makes the callback to the system. Now, this is not full geolocation. This is just IP information, which for a lot of things, if you can get what we call the tuple, the source IP address, the source port, and the date timestamp, that's enough information to go back to law enforcement. They can then get a warrant to the ISP, but you need those 3 things: the date timestamp, the source port, and the IP address. Now, we have 2 different types of links here. You can see that we've got a style sheet, and we also have an image source. So if a bad guy was worried about Microsoft Word, and by the way, this is independent of macros. So if you're thinking to yourself, oh, well, we disabled macros, this won't work. No, 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 no. This is completely independent of macros. So if you're a bad guy and you want to get around this, what would be a protective measure that you would take as a bad guy? Disconnect would be the cool thing, and I want them to do that. If they want to disconnect for every Word document, we're winning, right? That's awesome. What's another protective mechanism a bad guy could take? Yeah. Use Wireshark to see the packet capture, which is even cooler because then they can see it and go, I'm screwed. Does our hand go up over here? Sandboxing, same thing, disconnecting. Now, how many of you guys are, oh, go ahead. Client-side proxy to try to intercept and filter this type of call traffic. The cool thing, though, is you can obfuscate it just like anything else, right? So this is clear text, but you can use all the obfuscation tricks. What about using a different document viewer, right? If Word is what's triggering this, why don't we use something else? Well, what's cool about this is it also works with the something else as well, because this is built into the Active Defense Harbinger distribution. Once again, free. All of you will download it, hopefully. And it works with AbiWord, LibreOffice, Apple Text Editor, Microsoft Word for Mac. It even works for some documents that are converted to PDFs as well. Yes? It does not work for WordPad. It does not work for WordPad. The beautiful thing about WordPad, though, in some documents that it opens, it completely jarbles them, especially some of the new document formats that are out there. Unfortunately, this one, it would do, well, that's HTML. I'm not going to render that, but show it to you. So good point. So we have a number of ways that we can try to identify where the bad guys are and make their lives hell. And I want to give you guys a use case yet again. If you have a system that is compromised and you're doing incident response, and this is something that Dimitri has talked about in Cloudflare, he said creating documents that call back is legal. If you saw that first quote, we're not taking over the bad guy's computer system. We're merely making that document, we're merely making that applet call back home. And before people start freaking out and saying, no, it is violating the privacy of the bad guys, I want you guys to think about something. Every single time you open up Microsoft Word, it talks back to the Microsoft mothership. It also talks with all the other computers to see if any of them are open using Microsoft Word with the same license key. So these are things that vendors are doing all the time with software. It's always making a call back home. It's checking for updates. We're not crossing that line. We're not crossing that line, but it's a very powerful tool for law enforcement as well. So once again, this is an invitation. This is not me saying here's something that's cool, we're done with it. This is an invitation because we've got to kick some interns or former interns into actually implementing some of the cool things that people have been giving us as suggestions. We got some really cool stuff from Chris John Riley that we want to implement, and we got some additional tools that we want to implement. But this is an invitation not just to use the active defense harbinger distribution, but it's an invitation to every single one of you to take your offensive mindset and say, wait a minute, how can we turn this around to really mess with the bad guys? This is an invitation for you to jump into our sandbox and help us make this something cool. Because I tell you what, computer security sucks. There are very, very few people coming up with new technologies and new approaches to securing systems. Most of the vendors are selling you the exact same crap they sold you 5-6 years ago, and they're going to continue to sell it to you because it works, as in you buy it. There are very few people that we see people coming up with new innovative approaches to defense. Did anybody go to Script Junkies talk? Oh, come on. Thank you. Yes. Script Junkie is one of those people that's very, very offensive in mindset, and his defensive posts have been nothing short of brilliant. Follow his research and support him in what he does. Also, Dave Kennedy and with artillery and all the people that we listed out before. It is really important we start trying to find ways to make defense sexy, to make it fun again, because we're getting our asses kicked. And the reason why, I'll give you another thought exercise. Quick, how many people do we have in this room? I think we have over 100. Start naming firewalls. We got Checkpoint, Palo Alto, what else? Juniper, F5, Cisco iOS. What's that? Symantec, Fortinet, SonicWall, Barracuda. Does that count? We've already got Palo Alto. That was the first. Huh? PFSense, very good. We're at 10. IP tables, aren't they all IP tables under the hood? I mean, really? No, that one doesn't qualify either. We're at 10. Bread? Brick, 11. Nokia, Stonesoft, thank you, we're at 12. Sidewinders, 15. Now, what is the likelihood we'll get to 20? Now, what about market share? I would say whenever you guys were shouting out firewall vendors, you guys probably got 80 to 85, maybe even 90% of the market share in the first 4. Do you think our adversaries, I mean the ones that have money, not the Chinese, but the people proxying through China, do you think they'll actually go through and purchase all of those products and find ways to bypass them before they attack your network? What about AV? Really, let's be honest. A lot of us are pen testers. We do our best, right? We do our best on a regular basis. If you were not the Chinese or another nation state, do you think you'd have a fleet of people working around the clock just to bypass AV engines? The point about this is your adversaries, the people that you should be afraid of, they have almost perfect visibility and perfect understanding of your security architectures. They know every product you use. They know every AV that you use. And they're going to find ways to bypass them, because it's not that expensive and it's not that hard. So, with active defense, what we're talking about is non-standard traditional technologies for defense that they'll be surprised with. Let's start injecting a little bit of uncertainty whenever they attack our networks. And I think that that's going to be a good approach. So I'm asking you to help join the party. Give us ideas, because that's what we need more than anything. Even if you don't know how to code, if you don't know how to script, if you don't know how to do anything, if you come up to me and you're like, you know what would be cool is if there was a tool that did these following things. That's awesome. That's what we need is ideas. And we're looking for that support. And the thing that's beautiful is you guys in this room, you guys don't think normal. You guys are not normal individuals. I'm sorry, none of us are. You guys are good at what you do. You're good at breaking into computer systems, and you're good at security because you think strange. That's why I want you guys in the party, because we can think strange about offense, we can start thinking strange about defense. And that's desperately what we need right now. So, kind of in conclusion, if you guys want to know more, Paul and myself have written a book on this topic. You guys can scan the code, totally trust that, or you can write down the URL. The book, no, they cannot buy the book at the table. That's my fault on that. But you guys can purchase the book. It's in Kindle format, and at other conferences, we're now hiring someone other than me to make sure that we get copies of the book. And like I said, the book is really, I hate to say a manifesto, because that makes it sound like I live in a cabin out in the middle of the, oh crap, I do. But it really is kind of trying to establish the ground rules for active defense. So please, I hate to say this, buy our book, and we have more about it. Also, if you want to copy the slides, come up to me after the talk. We'll be at the paul.com booth. Drop off your business card or a sheet of paper with your email, and we'll get you the full copy of the slides. The reason why that's so important is we don't think the video is synced up quite so great for this particular presentation. All right, how much time do we got? I think we've gone over. I really feel bad. I don't know your name. What's your name?
Static Nerd.
Static Nerd? Steven. Everyone give Steven a round of applause for putting up with the crap. Are we done with time? All right. Everybody will be at the paul.com booth, so will Paul. And also, we'll have Ethan. Ethan's here. We'll have Benjamin. We'll have a number of people. Maybe we can get Mark Baggett to come there. But a number of us will be there answering questions about active defense. So come check it out. Join the party. Thank you, everybody. Yeah.